My name is Scott Leeb, and I'm here today to speak as part of the Leaders Angle Symposium about knowledge management and enterprise strategy. I'd first like to talk about what is knowledge management, both from a traditional sense and in my sense. And then what I would like to do was to give case examples from my experience in working for both public Fortune 500 companies as well as the leading philanthropy to show the very close link between knowledge management and enterprise strategy. Now, the traditional definition of knowledge management is very corporate and very structured in nature, and it deals with helping the organization become smarter. What I like to refer to it as is the OIQ, the organization's IQ. Knowledge management helps improve the organization's IQ. It makes the organization smarter. Now, how does it do so? It does so by improving what I'll call the situational awareness of all the people in the organization. So whatever your business environment is, if you work with and think about the competition, if you think about legal issues, if you think about regulatory issues, regardless of what the issues are that you're thinking about, knowledge management is designed to make you smarter, so ultimately, when you make decisions, you're better informed. And when you think about knowledge management, traditionally you think of a pyramid. At the base of the pyramid is data. And what is data? Data is pictures, data is images, data is numbers, figures, words. And then from that information, or from the data, you take it to information. So information begins to analyze, collect, collate the data. And then from the information, you get knowledge, which is contextualized information. Now, I have a slightly different view of what knowledge management is, and a bit simpler. And to me, it's quite simply getting the right intelligence to the right person at the right time to make the right decision. And quite simply, in this day of age of big data, there's too much stuff flowing around. And you really need to focus on the intelligence. And the intelligence is timely, actionable, and promotes decision making. Too often our knowledge management systems, the knowledge management programs, are stuffed with data and information. And really, for the system to work, it needs to have intelligence. It needs to be focused on the intelligence. There's a term many of you have probably heard called GIGO, garbage in and garbage out. And so the intelligence always has to be focused on the end consumer, what they need, when they need it, how they need it, and getting it to them quickly. Now, when I think about knowledge management, there are 5 different phases an organization goes through. And the first level is quite simply just awareness within your organization. And I will tell you there are a number of organizations at level 0. After that, it becomes putting processes, procedures, and frameworks in place. Now, during that time, you need an active knowledge management function or active knowledge management individuals pushing forward with knowledge management, explaining knowledge management. And you need executive support, you need constant training, and you need constant communication. The toughest part is the change management, getting people to think differently. And it really starts with getting people to think about data as a strategic asset. At phase 5, the knowledge management is part of the DNA of your organization. In 2013, the Rockefeller Foundation was celebrating its centennial. Now, the centennial, the Rockefeller Foundation did great work around the world for 100 years. There was much to celebrate. But with the retrospective also came the prospective. How do we remain relevant the next 100 years? Well, our one advantage was that we had been in business, so to speak, for 100 years. We had built up good connections on this continent, in Asia, in Europe, and a good reputation throughout the globe. So the idea was what we would have to do to remain relevant was to leverage our experiences. And so I was brought in to help make sure that the next decisions we made after the centennial were based on all the good decisions made before. Hence the tagline, getting the right intelligence to the right person at the right time to make the right decision. And so when I started, there were two key strategies, two key strategic issues which I needed to deal with. The first one was knowledge leakage. We had several, again, a small organization, so we had several people with long standing at the foundation, and they were getting ready to retire. And how to make sure that those insights, that intelligence, didn't walk out the door. I like to joke on our computer, we have the C drive where we store information on our computer. Then you have S drives where it's the shared information. Well, what's up here I refer to as the B drive in your brain. And how do you get the information from your B drive? How do you move it from tacit information to explicit intelligence? The second issue was we operated in silos. So how do we get to collaborate better, coordinate better? Well, the first thing I did was determine that the best way to get people to change the tacit knowledge or tacit information to explicit and to break down the barriers was to get at them as early as possible and continuously throughout their life cycle at the organization. So actually my first task at the Rockefeller Foundation was to talk to HR about setting up an orientation session where in fact we could talk about knowledge management, set expectations for what knowledge management was, what we were hoping to accomplish, but to more importantly begin to sensitize people to the importance of what knowledge resided in their head, how to get that onto paper. So obviously the next thing we did was create exit interviews. So we sat down with departing employees for about an hour or so, 2 or 3 weeks before they left, and asked them, you know, what were they working on? What were the key processes they were working on? And then we asked, if you left today, would your replacement be able to answer and work on those issues? Is there something in writing describing your processes and procedures? So one of the simplest things we looked to put in place was simply a naming convention. Because with knowledge management, you know, you can put the greatest systems in place to move information, intelligence quickly and frictionlessly throughout the organization. But if people don't know it's there, wouldn't know how to find it, wouldn't know how to search on it, it's useless. And so now I had something where we had the orientation and we had the exit interview. So what did we do during the life cycle of the individual? And in fact, someone had once asked me, when do you need to, when should you begin conducting the exit interview? And I looked at him and I said, quite simply, you should do it at orientation. Because if all along people are converting that tacit information into explicit intelligence, you're not going to need an exit interview. It becomes superfluous. So what we tried to do was to create a culture of knowledge sharing. Because let's face it, most organizations are batch learners. And they're ex post facto batch learners. You sort of, after the event, you wring your hands and you say, yeah, there were some things we could have done better. But I always ask the question, well, if we knew this as we were going along, could we have course corrected? And in fact, many times you could have. Improving our ability to make good decisions really depended on moving from batch learning to real-time learning. So you need the support of leadership to create the safe environment where you can talk about failures in a positive way. So as I think about knowledge management and strategy, when you think of strategy, there's 3 key drivers in my view of strategy There's understanding the market, customer intimacy, and operational effectiveness. And those three key drivers are absolutely essential and clearly work together. If you understand your customer, you're going to understand your market. Understanding your market is going to give you a product leadership position, and over time will allow you to develop the operational efficiency. But as you think of each of those drivers, there's a business strategy associated with it. But behind the business strategy, there's a knowledge management strategy. So let me give an example. I used to work at a tech distributor, Ingram Micro, which is the world's largest wholesale tech distributor. And let's look at operational efficiency. Well, for them, what it meant was keeping computers, TVs on the shelf for the shortest time possible. But from a knowledge standpoint, what did you need to know? Well, you needed to know the big box retailers. You needed to know that the first week in February was the largest week for them selling TVs. In the US, that's a Super Bowl. And so the knowledge strategy was working closely with the key big box retailers, understanding their needs, understanding their wants, understanding their flows and their rhythm of the business. And this also then helped with customer intimacy. So as you look at each of the drivers, you can go through each of them and then see how the knowledge management, the flow of intelligence, is critical for the success in each of those drivers. And as you look at the strategic planning process, in most organizations it's for a very finite period, but very specific steps. The first step is revisiting what you did last year. And so for knowledge management, you need to architect a program, architect an effort where you would sit down in a very structured way. What went well last year? What didn't go well last year? What do you think we should do this year? The next step is, gathering your information, making sure that as you develop the strategy, everybody's on the same sheet of music. So I think of knowledge management sort of creating the fence where the discussion takes place. What are the rules of the engagement? And then obviously you build the strategy, the communication, and the implementation of the strategy all involve knowledge management components, making sure as you're building it, the right people get the right intelligence at the right time so the right strategy can be created. And as you create your strategy, think about the questions you ask. Let's say you're thinking of entering the China market. What other lessons can be learned from across the organization? Maybe you've entered other big markets, India and Russia, for example. How do I get closer to my customer? Well, what do we know about our customer? Who knows what about our customer? Do we have a system in place where we track sort of our customer interaction? Do you grow organically or do you grow via partners and alliances? Well, what's been your history? What is your how have those relationships gone in the past? How do we innovate? How do we keep up? How do we keep up with our competition? That's a big question these days. Clay Christensen's The Innovator's Dilemma. How do we stay fresh? How do we consistently stay ahead of our competition? Well, the first thing to determine is, are you capable of being innovative? Do you have groups within the organization that are innovative? These are knowledge management questions. And you can go through a litany of strategic questions, and we talked about the strategic drivers, and see that underpinning each and every one of these is a knowledge management strategy. And that knowledge management strategy is based on moving the right intelligence throughout the organization in a timely, frictionless way so people can make the right decisions. So I will stop there and entertain any questions. Thank you.